with Special Needs, New Delhi, and the founder of 𝐻𝐻𝐿 Trust. We're so happy to partner with Momspresso. Personally, I love this platform for the learning and engagement it creates. Also, I'm glad that this series, Journey of My Child, did we get it right? We'll be able to reach out to many more moms out there because of this partnership, and hopefully it's very useful for you guys. If you missed on session 1 and 2, please go to our page, 𝐻𝐻𝐿 page, to see it, and you'll be able to see it. To all the moms out there, please feel free to send your comments, your questions, and we'll make this session as interactive as possible. Both Dr. Me and Dr. Naveen Mehrotra run a center for kids with special needs in GK2 New Delhi. I've built my understanding through the experience, the self-learning, and of course, the mentorship of Dr. Naveen. Dr. Naveen Mehrotra is a pediatrician from New Jersey, runs multiple centers in New Jersey. He's graduated from University of Chicago. And he also runs a foundation which provides a platform to support many families with special needs. He wanted to give back to India. That's why he has created this center and doing these sessions. The discussion today is about developing healthy eating patterns in our kids. Dr. Naveen, welcome. Everyone always talks about healthy eating and good nutrition. I know as a mother, it's one of my biggest challenge every morning, what to cook, how to feed my child, and whatever I'm feeding, is it giving the right nutrition and proper growth? Let's start, guys, as we're running 5 minutes late than the time. So I'll just jump into our first question is, what is considered a good nutrition, Dr. Naveen?
So first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to do this topic, which is very close to my heart. And this is definitely a great way to do education for our community, the viewers of Momspresso, 𝐻𝐻𝐿, and everybody that's listening to us. One of the biggest challenges, I think, for every single parent, and I think, practicing in the US, I see many different quote unquote ethnicities, so there will be our Desi population and our non-Desi population. But really our Desi population, I think, is the one that's so focused on how we feed our kids. What is it? Because we are all so invested into our children, right? We want to make sure what's the best for them. We want to make sure that we do the best that will provide them the optimal growth and development. So when we talk about healthy nutrition, there are multiple sites out there. There are multiple conversations that people have with their neighbors, with their grandparents, with their parents, and everybody has their own opinion. And everybody, all the different nations have their own guidelines in terms of what is good nutrition and what is not. So, if you look at multiple guidelines, you can take away a few key points, and that's what we'll be addressing here. We know that, you might have seen the food pyramid, you might have seen a food plate, you might have seen multiple things. And you know that there are different types of food groups. So there are food groups that are, fruits and vegetables. There are food groups that are the cereals, the dairy products, the fats, and the proteins. Everybody has this terminology. Everybody goes ahead and throws out these terms. But there are just a few guidelines that you need to understand. One of the big programs that we have out here in the US is something called 5210, where we talk about having 5 different fruits and vegetables in the course of a day. We want to make sure that there is limitation of 2 hours of media time. We want to make sure that there is at least 1 hour of physical activity. And we want to make sure that there is 0 sugary drinks. There's a big cultural concept in our community that fruit juice is great. But what we don't realize is that you need to eat the fruit as a whole, as opposed to just taking the extract out, which has a lot of sugar in it. So you need the fiber, you need the pulp. So if you look at the different food groups, the guidelines that you should follow is that the child should have at least 5 fruits and vegetables. They should have, if they're taking whole grains, which they should be taking, at least 50% of them should be whole grains. They should go ahead and drink at least have 2 servings of 2 to 3 dairy products in a day. So they should have, maybe 2 cups of milk, maybe a cup of yogurt, and so on. And then the rest, really minimize the fat content in the food, and to make sure that you have a shared portion of proteins. We in the natural diet at home have this built into our diet, right? So when you have the dal and you have the roti and then you have the yogurt, so on, all of this is encompassing the food groups. We may not have realized it, but our forefathers knew that. And that is what they used to put on our plate. So that's a long-winded answer of something that, you wanted exact guidelines, do this, this, and this, because we have to adapt with what we have at home. We have to adapt with what our neighbors, our friends, our grandparents are telling us, but follow these certain guidelines in terms of making sure that the child is having a good nutritional intake.
Doctor, one of the question that we get a lot is also right now is how can one develop a good eating pattern?
So a good eating pattern starts with the modeling behavior. And I think, all well and said about Corona, the bad things that are happening in Corona. The good things are that the family is together. In a few months ago, when the Corona was not there, we were all running around helter skelter. So, the dad was going, morning till night. The mom was doing something else. The kids were running around in their activities. But now that the family is together, one of the most critical things is to have that family meal time where everybody can sit together and enjoy the food. We had really forgotten what food was all about, right? We were just sort of stuffing our kids' faces. We were just sort of getting through the routine to make sure that we were running with the kid to one after school activity or another one. So we want to make sure that everybody sits together and enjoys the food. The second thing that a lot of parents, they just want to go ahead and complete the product. They want to go ahead and complete the motion of having the child eat. So you want the child to enjoy the food. So make them a part of, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis in terms of cooking or in terms of shopping and so on. You want to make sure that the eating time does not become a time of a battle, right? So you're constantly not fighting with the child. Plate pe rakh diya, khana khana padega, right? It's not like that. Let them understand what the food is about, what the plate is about, and make sure that the child actually enjoys the food and not just makes it a task for the parent as well as for the child. So enjoy the food, make sure that you're eating the right types of food, and make sure that everybody's bonding together. I think those are the things that when you put all of those thoughts together and you make that a part of your daily routine, eating will become a pleasant experience and your child will develop good eating habits.
As you talked about the family time, one question that is, I'm sure, in many families, and we are getting that question too. It's very popular association in many houses between the TV and the meal time. And what do you have to say about that, Doc? Is that okay? Or is that needs to be altered? Because that's just one of the things as a working, like you said, as a working parent, or TV time has become one of a very popular thing, and every parent struggles through it because they feel कि खत्म हो जाएगा खाना हमारे मेरे बच्चे के प्लेट में अगर टीवी ऑन कर दिया. What would you like to say about that?
Right. So, and I'm also getting lots of questions coming through Twitter and so on. The issue that's happening is that we make it a task, and our thought is that the child has to eat, right? That if the child doesn't eat, that something is going to go wrong. The child is, going to get sick, and the child is not going to develop properly. That is not the case. Everybody in their brain has a hunger center, which gets stimulated when you're hungry. The body knows what is its requirement, and you need to go ahead and help the child fulfill that requirement. So when you're sitting there with the media on, the child has no concept of what's going into their mouth. The child is sitting there like this, and the mom is going ahead and feeding the child, because her task is that she wants to go ahead and make sure that the child gets the nutrition that she thinks the child needs, not what the child actually may need, but this is the expectation that the parent has put on the child, and you are fulfilling that expectation by, you know, stuffing the child's face with all that food. So first of all, you want to understand that if the child doesn't eat a meal properly on one day or on one time, it's okay. Nothing is going to go wrong. You want to go ahead and have the child enjoy the food. So turn that TV off. Don't make a production, and don't open a restaurant in your house. Most And I think you're just as much at fault as this, Hemi, as all the moms that are out there, or dads these days. I should not just isolate out to moms, but we are on Mom's Presso, so I'll refer back to moms. But you know, the kid doesn't eat one thing, mom will go ahead and say, okay, bacha, let me make something else for you. If the kid doesn't eat that second thing, she'll make a third thing or a fourth thing. No, you don't need to do that. You don't need to go ahead and put on a dance and show for your child, so just that the child can eat based on your expectation. So you want to make sure the child actually is hungry, and that the child will actually eat what is in front of them. So the other thing that happens is it becomes a manipulative behavior for the child, right? So one of the questions that just came through is the child starts to throw up because the mom is going ahead and forcing the child to eat, and the child obviously is going to gag and throw out. So you want the child to eat when they're hungry. You want to make sure that the child is enjoying the food. And we'll keep on saying the same thing again and again and again, because it's not a rocket science. It's something that you need to understand as a parent, that it's okay if the child does not eat properly in one meal time. Don't make it, as I said, 2 ghante ka kaam ya 3 ghante ka kaam. It becomes a task for many, many parents.
That reminds me of one of the another popular question that's been out there, and I have been through this personally. Is my daughter used to just eat and leave the food on the side inside her cheeks for like hours and hours, till I would scream and yell, and it would be a nightmare in the house. I remember you telling me back then, let it be, let her starve. It's nothing is going to happen if she doesn't eat for 2 days. And I'm sure many parents out there are feeling that way. I would like, and it was a difficult time, and I would like, and as a parent it's a very difficult time, because you feel that your kid is starving, and what's going to happen, they don't eat, then what's going to happen. I would like to understand, uh, and our
So
viewers would like to know about that.
imagine this, right? The show and production you do when you get angry, and what thrill the child gets by seeing their mom or dad, putting on this dance and show, Are, cow, this, that sort of a thing. And the manipulative behavior that develops in the child, because the child is able to actually control. So on demand, if the child does not eat and puts the food in the mouth, wow, what a nice trigger, right? Mom is going to go ahead and start getting angry. I love the control I have on the mom. Mom is going to go ahead and give me TV. Mom's going to go ahead and maybe sing a song for me. Mom is going to go ahead and sing a nursery rhyme for me, right? So that control that the child has is an amazing power that they have. So we as parents, we want to go ahead and make sure the child is eating, but the child will hold that food in there because they don't want to go ahead and lose that time. So if they eat in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, obviously mom is going to go away and go on to her own task. But they know that, throughout the day, parents are running around, they're never there. And now all of a sudden, if I can control them with food, that is what happens. And that is what we talk about as manipulative behavior. It doesn't mean that the child is doing something wrong. This is inherent in their nature, and it is some way that they have learned to control the parents time to be there. So they want to go ahead and hold that food in until they're done, or until they get their time with the parent. So don't pay so much mind to what the child is wanting or what the child is making you do. It's like sort of a madarika show, right? You're doing, okay, here, drum, drum, drum. Mom and dad are doing a dance for the kid, and they're circulating around the table until the child eats. So we need to cut that misconception, and that is going to be one of the biggest and first step in making sure that the child develops good eating habits.
Doctor, we've talked about this multiple times in our other shows, and it's a question about vitamins. A parent is asking, are there any specific vitamins that I should give to my child?
Well, if the child is eating well and the child is eating a balanced meal, like we talked about, having a plate that is mixed with fruits and vegetables, making sure there is protein on the plate, making sure there is some fat in the plate, and making sure there's dairy in the plate. If all of that is being consumed on a daily basis in the meals, then the child does not need any sort of extra vitamins. Vitamin industry is one of the biggest industries out there. Uh, all parents feel that they need to go ahead and give their child a vitamin, but it is not critical, it is not needed. The parents need to realize that if you give too much, that can also harm the child. If there is a documented deficiency, so as part of the routine checkups with the child, when you go to the pediatrician, they may ask for certain blood work. When they examine the child, they may notice some signs of vitamin deficiencies, which are later signs, but that is definitely the time when the child needs to go ahead and take extra vitamins. Now, if we look at specifics, vitamin D deficiency is very, very common these days. It's because our kids are not outside playing in the sun. So sun is the source of vitamin D, and we are not just taking that in. So that is definitely, and especially I think with a lot of stuff that's going on the internet where parents are being told or kids are looking into it, they're not drinking milk. So they're not getting the dairy, they're not getting the vitamin D, they're not getting the calcium. They may need to go ahead and definitely take that as a supplement. If you are a vegetarian and you're not consuming some of the proteins that have vitamin B12, you may need to go ahead and take that in, and other types of vitamins that are then documented based on the blood work. But otherwise, as a routine, I would not recommend that for parents.
There is one of the question that has popped up. The 2-year-old baby boy and even their 4-year-old daughter, they just prefer having rice. They do not like to eat dal and sabzi. Is there anything to worry about? Is there anything they need to do? Um,
Sure, and I think this goes back to how do we develop good eating patterns in our kids. Once again, this is the misconception that parents have, that if the child doesn't eat something, there's something that's going to go wrong. So the child starts to develop a preference. We feed into that preference, meaning that, Are kuch bhi kha lega. Let me just go ahead and give him some plain rice. Let me just go ahead and give what the child wants. But that is a habit that we have created for the child. Obviously, if he stays on this meal pattern, there are going to be deficiencies that develop into the kid. So you want to go ahead and unlearn that behavior and keep on offering the balanced meal with your vegetables, with your dairy, and so on, and the dal that you need to mix in. It will take some time. It has taken a few years for the child to learn this behavior. It will take a few months to unlearn that behavior. So we would have to go ahead and start to enforce proper meal times, enforcing that the child needs to eat certain meals, and making sure that we understand that nothing is going to go wrong. And how do you actually develop that interest is going to be how you involve the child in the whole meal process. Do you take the child in to go for shopping? Right now, we're not going to go ahead and do that because of Corona. Have we maybe asked the child to grow little vegetables in our little vegetable garden and get the kid excited about fruits and vegetables? Have we then given them a choice to go ahead and say, well, there are all these fruits and vegetables. Have we taken the time to educate them and say, well, why don't we choose one for today, and you choose the one for tomorrow, and so on. So get them involved in the process of enjoying the fruits and vegetables. Let them eat it raw. Let them take it out of the ground. Let them go ahead and learn about the various offerings that are there that nature has provided. And only then will the child get excited and then want to go ahead and eat. It will take some time. It will go ahead and take some coaching for the parents as well as for the kid.
Related to this question, there is another question. The child has specific preferences of certain food, even including junk food, eating out. And is there anything? So I guess, like you said, have to have patience, have to work on it, have to figure out different ways what works for your family. But is there anything specific on junk food that you would have to say, Dr. Naveen?
Sure. Junk food is another big industry that's out there that I think we have all fallen into a trap with. Obviously, even we as adults love junk food. We love going out. We love to savor foods that are not the healthiest for us. And the kids have the right to go ahead and have the junk food, right? But it has to be done in moderation. If we have not introduced that to our kids, that's perfect. But we fall into that trap, and because of all of their other friends and families that are eating the junk food, we offer it to the kids because the kid throws a temper tantrum. As long as we go ahead and control what they're taking in, we should cut down the number of junk food intakes that they have. Teaching, and right now, once again, with the corona, this is probably the best time because there is very limited access to junk food. This is the time for them to understand that junk food is not the best for them. It's not the healthiest for them. There's a lot of chemicals that go into it. There's a lot of processing that goes into it. So, but they will come back to you and throw a tantrum and saying, all of my friends, parents give them junk food. Why do you stop me from taking junk food? You're one of the worst parents out there. You're a terrible mom or you're a terrible dad. And since we feel guilty because we're constantly running around and we feel this is the way to show our love, that is not the right thing for us. So we should not bribe our kids with junk food and say to them, hey, if you do this, I'll give you a bag of potato chips. Or if you do this, I'll go ahead and give you a bag, a box of chocolates. Get away from that. Let the junk food be only something that is given to them very sparingly and making sure that it does not become a bribe for them.
Dr. Naveen, related to there is one parent saying that it's difficult. The kid is very active, 2.5 year old. It gets difficult when they have to do some work. They don't have a choice, but if either it's a food time or something, they have to either give a TV to keep the environment safe, or they have to have someone watching the child. Otherwise, to do any work or to get the child to eat or do anything else is impossible. They don't know how to cope up with the situation.
Right. So there are extreme cases where kids may have quote unquote, attention disorders or hyperactivity disorders. I'm not saying what this kid has is abnormal, but that is one thing to think about in the back of our minds. We as a pediatrician would go ahead and keep that in mind. If the child is hyper or if it's not being able to be controlled, we need to teach the parents some guidelines. The child is going to throw a temper tantrum, ignore that tantrum. It's okay. If the child knows that you mean business, they will slowly calm down and they will slowly start to make sure that they learn to eat. So just because the kid is not eating, once again, we'll go back to the same thing, does not mean that something is going to go wrong. If everybody's sitting together, we eat at that time. In that time, in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you've eaten is fine. Take away the meal. Don't make it a pressure on the parents as well as on the kid to finish off what's on the plate. Once you're done, the next meal time, go ahead and do that again. Don't in between, do not try to go ahead and substitute with some junk food or milk or whatever the child wants, because you want the child to develop that hunger. You want that hunger center to be stimulated in the brain so that the child can feel hungry. And the child will get cranky, the child will be chit 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 chit. But if you're consistent and if you go ahead and train the child for a few weeks, they will go ahead and learn.
I believe we're running out of time. We would be able, if you've not answered your question, we will try to answer it after the session. Dr. Naveen, would you like to sum up the session and then I will finish it off? So, how would you
So
like?
so Hemi, you have gone through this many times, and I think we've had lots of conversations around this. And I think this is where the bulk of my time goes in counseling parents in terms of how do you develop good eating patterns and how do you develop good healthy habits. Most importantly, make sure that you offer a good, healthy, nutritious meal to the child. Make sure that you go ahead and have those family meal times. Make sure you cut out the use of media and give it time. Everything will turn out okay in the long run. If the child skips a meal or two or three or four, it's okay. You have to think that you are doing the best for the kid by training them. So don't feel that you're the terrible parent if the child does not eat one meal. Don't substitute with junk food just because the child wants it. The child may want many different things, but we as parents have to provide the right guidance. And that is what I want every single parent that's listening to understand, and hope for all the best.
Some of the important learnings that I also learned from this session, very true, Dr. Naveen. Go food shopping with your kids to teach them eating choices. Of course, family time is meal time is very, very important. It has made a big difference in my life. I'm sure it will work for many parents out there. Um, let's even help make your kids cook with you guys. Don't stress about the amount of food they eat. If they're starving for 2 days, it's not the end of the world. Like Dr. Naveen just said, avoid bribes and set a good example. Thank you to all the listeners, and stay tuned for our next session next Sunday, 5:30. If you enjoyed the session, please feel free to share it on the social media. Thank you, and see you next Sunday.